Hello and welcome. And unfortunately, in the last 11 years, a lot of things have been said about what Bitcoin is, what blockchain is, and whatever else. And the reality is, practically every one of them is wrong, right down to hashes secure the network. Hashes are a message authentication method. They're a digest. They don't secure anything. They prove that you're spending money on the network, and they show that a file hasn't changed. Zero security. Security is because of Section 3 of the white paper. Everything's public. That's it. So one of the things, why? Because I was involved in many industries back in the old days of gaming, when things weren't so pretty and flashy and all the rest. I was involved with Lassiter's. I helped set them up, helped get all the security in place, helped get the auditing in place, helped get all the systems that enabled Lassiter's to actually become the first online casino that was licensed, that was legal everywhere. And that went for many years until, of course, everyone probably, if they're old enough, remembers Black Friday and all the vanishing of everything very quickly. But what people don't seem to put together is on September 9th, 2008, I believe it was, Lassiter's put a declaration into the Australian Stock Exchange. They said basically they're going to have to close down. They went out, and in October and November they put out further announcements and closed down. So Bitcoin wasn't ever about this bullshit about in 2009 where the housing market collapsed or anything like that. It was about how do we actually make an industry where the American government can't sweep the sort of carpet clean and get rid of us all overnight. And part of that was what is known as Pari-mutuel Wagering. So the first version of Bitcoin that I was experimenting with had some early things like markets and poker games and other such things. And the reason for Pari-mutuel is it was really a way of legally doing that to the American government. Literally, it was about a system where I could get away with creating something that would enable no rake, but a transaction fee to allow small or even larger poker games and other such things that would act over the internet in a way that was safe and secure. And because of things like Pari-mutuel, which is actually legal throughout the US, even in places like California or New York, for small bets, there are actually ways of creating games that just get around all the US laws that they had in that time. So an operator could not take the house bet the same way, but they could actually still have games that would attract people, that would be secure, everything else. On top of that, why do we have all of these things, multiple outputs and whatever else in Bitcoin? Because if we're going to have a regulated legal industry, like we did with Lassiter's, like I was trying to do with Playboy Gaming, like some of the people in MGM wanted to do, well, you need to actually pay your bills. You need to pay your affiliates. You need to make sure that they know what's happening, but also you need to pay government. And we could have actually done that on every bet. So the Australian government would have been able to take basically every time a wager was made an instant payment, rather than having it once a year or some quarterly payments, rather than having to come into the organisation and cause problems every month, which was great for me because I had to get flown back and forwards and paid extra money every time they wanted to audit things. But it would enable a situation where the government could monitor basically a set of records, knowing that they're secure, knowing that they're going to run, knowing that everything's okay, and never have to come into the organisation and bother anyone. That's part of why the blockchain. Why is it public? Because you don't need to have auditors come in there and validate things. They can actually do it remotely. So peer poker was one of the first things I tried to make. Unfortunately, none of this got off the ground, and my idea of a poker game today would never get off. It's ugly, and the whole industry's moved on from where I was. But it's still doable. People who can actually design things, create, well, basically platforms that look good, not like we had 10 or 20 years ago, can actually come out really easily right now and create something on top of a blockchain. Bitcoin is why that's there, and it works because it's public. The first thing you've got to understand is there's no such thing as a private blockchain. Full stop. There never can be. The security of a private blockchain is zero. There's a reason why people keep using IBM, and it's not because people... Actually, IBM are the only company I know that every executive that I know in the past who ever brought in IBM got fired. It's the exact opposite of what people say. I've never met a company where, when I was auditing, where IBM didn't end up coming in and fucking up and having people fired. So this Hyperledger thing, private blockchains, private Ethereum ones, zero security because hashes don't secure your network. The publication of that hash is what secures your network. Everyone has it. That's why it's secure. Not everyone verifies a transaction. Everyone has the hash. Section 3, the shortest, pithiest little page section of the white paper I wrote. I should have put more detail in it because everyone overlooks it. Why is it important? Because everyone sees that number. That thing, like a newspaper, like Usenet, when you publish it, means it's there. No one can redo it. With mutual sort of casinos, small games, we can start doing this in a way all the customers can self-regulate and self-enforce. Who cares most? The people who have money on the table. The people who need to audit, need to actually view things. The affiliates, they're the ones who are going to keep you honest. If they can see all of the transactions and know what they're being paid, they now have a record. It's not about everyone running a node. It's about the people involved in a transaction knowing that their transaction is safe. That's it. And honestly, do you care if someone in Hong Kong right at the moment, is an affiliate that you've never met, gets paid correctly or not? I'm sure you don't. I don't. If I was doing these things, I care about my payments. I only ever cared about my payments. Say what you want. That's the reality of the scenario. No one is ever going to get any better than that. We can do things like charity, bingo, whatever else, but in a provably fair manner. Why? Because it's audited, it's live, it's public. The reason we have a ledger that is public, why we use a hash is a message digest. It means that big file is put into a small bit of information. That's how you scale. That's it. Now, anyone can check all of that information that is kept out there, and they can verify it all. That's it. None of this other stuff that people tell you about not trusting or anything like this. It really comes down to being able to now even create games that have licenses built in so that the regulators get paid without bothering you. Back in the 90s and even into the early noughties, when I was involved with Lassiter's, the government regulators were annoying bastards. Why? Because every month they would be looking through our records, shutting down all the systems, looking at what happened, checking their records against ours over and over. If they don't need to do this, it saves money. It makes things more efficient. It makes everyone more profit. The regulators are happy because they get paid faster. The government gets paid faster. They don't need to worry about fraud or crime. And more importantly, the operators and the affiliates get paid quicker, and they get paid without worrying about being defrauded, without worrying about money being lost, without any of that. That's what it's really about. It enables you to then have a contract that has all the different outcomes, controlling what you can and can't do in a way that if you want to dispute, it is right there. There's no, basically, you can't easily cheat on the system. There's no way of saying, I put my money in, but it didn't get credited. You can see it happen. That's what blockchain's really about. So we can know that if we're creating our own games, if we want a group of poker players online that are friends, we can do that. And someone can actually run up a system in practically every country and still be legal. There are ways of actually getting around all of the laws legally, which is a good thing. Not we want to go out there and make heroin markets, not we want to fuck the government. We want to work in the laws so that it maximizes returns. That's really it. So we have happy customers. So we have people who want to do all this. So before I finish, I'm going to give you a little bit of a history. Everyone thinks Bitcoin is the first peer-to-peer crypto system. No. In the 90s, I was working with a number of these things, and there were more cryptos than there are now. There were more token systems than there are now. ICOs are small. The cryptocurrency space, just before it ended in 2001, was over $1 trillion US. Every cryptocurrency right now has not made half of that. You know how fast all of this disappeared in 2002? 1 week. 1 trillion to zero in a week. Why? We had Napster, we had all these other things seeking to break the law. People say, oh, but Bitcoin's different because it's decentralized. Who gives a fuck? Mojo Nation was decentralized. Mojo Nation, that none of you probably know about anymore, was a decentralized content sharing network with cryptocurrency based on proof of work. It was launched 20 years ago. The one thing none of these systems had was a public blockchain. The only innovation in Bitcoin was to make it public. The one thing I did was to realize that every single one of these cryptocurrencies, every one of them, and Hyperledger is exactly the same as Micromint and a few others that existed, and they failed. Drastically, insecurely, utterly. Billions lost. Why is it different? Because the information is public. The distribution of hashes makes Bitcoin secure. Private information, forget it. Bitcoin is secure because it can't be anonymous, and people can always check basically a lane of hashes. That's it. That's the secret. That's what everyone seems to neglect and miss. Thank you.